Good morning, everyone. How's everyone feeling this morning? Good. Okay, can I get a quick show of hands? How many people here attended the conference taking place this past couple of days? Wow. Okay, good. So, interesting. So, welcome to ArabNet for those of you who have not attended the conference yet. ArabNet is the leading conference for the Arab web and mobile industry. We bring together people who are working in this sector from global companies like Google and Yahoo and Microsoft, regional players like National Net Ventures from Saudi Arabia or 2454 from Abu Dhabi, and startups, young people with ideas and with new companies. We allow them to present their ideas on this stage, and there are a lot of investors and business professionals in the audience who can basically connect with them to help them grow their businesses. So we just wrapped up basically 3 days of events, a full day for developers discussing technical issues, what's cutting edge in different platforms, and then a 2-day forum where we had speakers from around the region and around the world coming in to address what's going on in the web and mobile industry. And there was a focus over the last couple of days in the discussion about two important things. One is social, the integration of social features into everything that's going on in the web. And the other one is mobile, the new rising platform for the digital industry. And so essentially what we're here to talk about is, this is the community day is a free day open to the public. The concept of it is to raise awareness about what's going on in the digital sector. It's going to be it's going to be an introduction to what's going on. And we're going to give you more time to ask questions. So we're here to discuss that. But I'm going to start first by taking a quick straw poll from the audience to get a sense of what the audience is like. So, first question: how many people here have an iPhone or a BlackBerry or a smartphone? Great. Now, how many people here have downloaded an app? Okay, good. How many people here have a Facebook profile? How many people have a Twitter profile? Okay.
Was that more than Facebook?
No. Let's see it again. How many people have a Facebook profile? Raise your hands high.
90%.
And how many people have a Twitter profile?
60%.
So, no, I'd say the same.
I'd say pretty close.
Yeah?
Maybe slightly less.
I can barely see the light.
How many of you use a landline at home?
How many people here know what venture capital is? How many people know what an angel investor is? I guess it's the same people. Okay, good. So I guess that gives us a sense. So I've got with me here today 3 people to cover different sectors of what's going on in web and mobile. I've got Atallah to my left. Patrick is the CEO of 9010 Group, which is a social media consultancy based in Europe and now in the Middle East. I've got Fawzi, Rahal, who's the head of regional communications for G2 and also the founder and editor of the Next Web Middle East. Fawzi covers all things related to web and mobile on that site. And I've got Ziad Matar, who's the head of MENA for Qualcomm. And Qualcomm, if you don't know what they do, they are behind the chips that are in a lot of smartphones, and they are a research and development company that develops 3G and 4G technology. So first I'm going to ask them each to give us a little bit of a status update on what's going on in the industry. So maybe I'll start with Patrick. Patrick, tell us a little bit about what's going on in the industry in terms of social media. How many users do we have in the region using Facebook, Twitter? What are they talking about? What are they doing on social media?
This is kind of like a very good question because it's growing every day, and more revolution in these actual countries are happening, and more those tools are being used, which is a bit kind of like scary for companies because more and more that people are using those tools, and more kind of like companies are afraid of using social media because transparency is becoming the key word in terms of communication, conversation between peer-to-peers, population, and others. In terms of statistics, I think that there's no real surveys and real statistic that has been done in details in the region, so we can give it, just a sum, which is anything between 20 to 25 million users are using anything between Facebook and Twitter. If we take Lebanon alone, it's about 1.2 million users of Facebook. Twitter is a bit less. It's about 2 million users, I think, in the region. LinkedIn is growing as well. There's other kind of like sites like Ariba that have come up out of, I think it's out of Dubai, if I'm not wrong, lately. So there's many kind of like few sites that have started in the region, but there's no real statistics. So this is kind of like very difficult questions. In terms of usage, the only thing I can say is that Facebook is leading. After the forums, which in fact are a lot being used, the difference between forums and Facebook is that on the forums, you are not using your personal profile. So you don't have your picture, you don't have your date of birth, you don't have your experience, where you're born, etc., which is totally different on Facebook. The difference between forums and Facebook is as well the multimedia aspect, where on Facebook you have photos, you have videos. Bandwidth is something as well in terms of internet that is changing a lot the way that our brands and products and services are being promoted on Facebook. If you take, for example, Lebanon, we see lots of text and photos and a bit less of videos, where in Dubai, because there is no kind of like broadband, so the content is totally different. So again, the usage of social media and social networks in the region depends of different things: the culture, the population, the brands, and the broadband of internet. And more, and we're going to talk about it, is in fact is accessing social networks through mobile. The location-based services like, for example, Foursquare or Facebook locations and Facebook deals and Facebook places is going to become something which is important moving forward. But for that, you need to have 3G, for example, in Lebanon in order to go and access it through your mobile phone, so you can have really the real user experience for that. So that's what I can say kind of like in a very quick, short, not detailed, I know, about social media in the region.
Okay, great. Thank you. Fawzi, can you give us a sense of what's going on in terms of web entrepreneurship? What are the startups that you're seeing? And what's going on in the investment scene? What are the investors really interested in? What are the trends, kind of a big picture?
I actually moderated the VC panel, I think it was the day before yesterday. Moderated too many, can't remember anymore. And one of the aspects that I noticed, and let's talk first in terms of the actual startups and the types of startups that are happening, whether the ones that we've seen during ArabNet, we're talking about, let's say, the startup demo or the ideathons, or everybody that's been around, and then we'll talk about the actual VCs and what they're contributing and doing. In terms of what the startups are and what kinds of businesses that I've noticed and we're noticing have been popping up recently towards the end of 2010 and all the way until through 2011 is a lot of people are actually looking at the weaknesses of the market and truly identifying them. We have a lot of problems and challenges in not just the general term that we always, excuse me, go up and complain about, which is we don't have content. We actually don't even have enabling technologies. We don't have properly set up back-end devices or platforms that help us or help any developer create an app that can do billing. We don't have back-end devices or platforms that help people create gaming elements. We don't have enablers even as organizations or agencies that create content. Again, going back to content. All of these are things we're seeing this year in terms of behavior. We've got I'm just going through the list of people in the startup demo to give you an idea of how many there have been in this. Edufina was all about crowdsourcing and getting some content that's content related. Nuqudi was enabling people to actually also get some content and go through trading. We had a couple of apps that were revolving around special deals, group buying, transaction processing. We had some that were only about content community providers. The general trend is to create these kind of enablers because this is apparently a weakness in the market. There probably are a lot of good ideas out there, but there aren't a lot of good people who are capable of developing such enabling devices. So this is good because we have a base now upon which a lot of people can build. Not nobody, but a lot of people can stop complaining about the fact that we don't have backends, enablers, platforms on which we can build and start creating advanced platforms. We still have a weakness in things like what Patrick was saying, location-based elements, because so far, and I'm not blaming this on you guys who are here today because you probably are one of the most active, but generally we don't contribute. We don't contribute to crowdsourcing. We don't add this information online. And this is the base of getting all this content up and running and verifying it and validating it. So it's a trend. It's a lot better than before, but it will need to also progress towards getting additional content through crowdsourcing, through the help of the actual users and browsers. In terms of the actual venture capitalists and the investments that are happening, there's been a lot. I mean, I had 5 people on my panel, each one covering a specific region or a specific part of technology, and it's everything. It's everything from these kind of enablers to content creators to getting an idea that is functional and working abroad. I mean, even look at any startup that has happened in the West. If it's a good idea and it works in Arabic, it can be localized, let's do it. That's as encouraging and helpful as they've been. And it's not just the financial aspect of it. There's a lot of you guys or people out there who have the finance, but don't know how to create the proper business plan, don't have the right contacts, have a specific weakness in one of the aspects, they don't know how to properly manage the industry or look at the financial aspect or maybe invest in the technology of it, resource-wise. They're also providing that assistance. So it's a really good mix between everything that's going on. If you've got an actual startup that's already there, you want to expand it into Saudi, there's people out there who can do it.
So in terms of consumer startups though, what did you see across the board, whether through the startup demo or through the companies? Did the VCs mention specific kind of companies that they were invested in? No, they hadn't.
No.
Okay, interesting. Well,
trying to be neutral, I think.
Sorry?
They were trying to be a bit neutral.
They were trying to be neutral. Okay. Well, we'll have to talk to them about that later.
We will in a bit.
Well, thank you, Fawzi. Ziad, can you give us a sense of what's going on in the mobile sector? How many users, spread of 3G, apps? What can you tell us about that?
A lot is
I think you need to also say that any 3G device that ever comes out anywhere in the world is through Qualcomm.
You're starting a fight now. No. Well, we're happy to be basically at this time in the mobile industry, frankly. What's happening, especially these 2 years, there's a lot of inflection points that are taking place. 3G picked up finally after 10 years of being invented maybe and promoted in the early 2000s. Today, we have around 10 3G subscribers registering every second. That's 10, 20, 30, right now as we speak. So
where? Globally? Or?
Globally.
Globally.
The numbers in this region are not very far from the global average. We have various countries that are much higher than the average, like the GCC, and we have countries that are lower than the average. What's happening in addition to this, basically, we're seeing that more than 50% of all new phones sold have 3G capability. And actually, the smartphone part of that segment is growing tremendously. At the high end, we're going to see growth times 3 almost in the coming 5 years. But in the middle end and the low end, so we see the growth of around 9 times in the coming 5 years. So basically, the smartphone is being democratized. The law of big numbers is making sure that the smartphone is simpler, is cheaper, and is available to more people, so that anybody at the end of the day who can afford one or knows how to use one will be able to buy a smartphone. That's the key thing that's going to happen. Now, this is leading to a tremendous revolution in terms of the pressure that is being put on the networks. Because of the social networking devices and, applications and servicing running on these phones, plus email, plus downloading and streaming videos and music, etc., we see that basically whatever the global industry consumed in a year in 2008 will be done in a month in 2014. And we are conservative. So this is going to put a lot of pressure on the mobile infrastructure operators to provide that type of capacity and that type of bandwidth, basically. We're helping there. So what we know today, if you look at the GCC, every country in the GCC today has a baseline, basically, of 21 megabits per second available on the mobile via dongles today. And most smartphones can do 7.2 megabits per second. That's a very high number. And we have seen in Saudi Arabia and the UAE up to 42 megabits per second services launched this year. Across the region, the number are more around the 7.2 in the other countries, and there are a few countries, unfortunately, like Lebanon, where we don't have mobile broadband today, where we don't have 3G. But these numbers are increasing. What's happening, again, on the inflection side of things, This year, like we said, the first time, we would sell more 3G phones globally than 2G phones, which means everybody can have internet on their mobile. But in addition to this, more smartphones will sell globally than a total number of PCs and laptops. And tablets is a different story in addition to that. So basically, the internet is literally going mobile. People will be accessing, again, in 2011, more people will access the internet via broadband on a mobile device than on a fixed device. So all of that is moving in a direction whereby mobile becomes the main way we access the internet, and fixed or a PC-based experience needs to be there, but is a secondary experience. It's not the primary experience. And we see that from social networks that are today starting primarily on the mobile before moving to the PC, like Path, like Instagram, like Color, instead of actually starting on a PC-based platform and then moving onto the mobile.
Great. Thanks. Do you guys want to do the Jeopardy part?
You can't,
Do you have questions?
Yeah, I do have questions, actually.
Great. How do you want to go ahead?
I want to ask him a question.
Okay, go ahead.
In terms of creating these devices, so you guys are popping out 3G devices every 10 seconds before buying
3G
them.
subscribers are popping around the world.
Okay. Do you really think it's a natural step for this to keep going on for as long as it has? I mean, you're saying 3G was created 10 years ago. It's only picked up in the past couple of years in this region. How long do you think it's going to take for 4G or LTE to be rolled out?
7 years.
Another 7 years?
No, from the time it was invented, usually.
Okay, so
even if you look at 3G,
about 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So give it for 5 more years to become really a democratic platform.
Can you give us more background on this?
The 5 years, the 7 years?
No, the 4G.
Ah, the 4G. Well, I mean, Gs are there, and there are various definitions for Gs: gaming, gambling,
Generation, which is the actual
girls.
word.
Generation is the real one. Well, first generation was basically what we used to have, these big phones that used to sit in the cars, or the one that Gecko in Wall Street used, the big brick phone. And these were phones that were just doing voice. This was the first generation of telephony. And by the end of the 80s, the world decided that we maybe need to add some digital aspect to that, but it was purely for the transport of voice. And we know this commonly in this region as GSM. And we had voice, and also we had a very nice accidental invention, which was SMS, which enabled the transfer of at least some form of data over the mobiles, and picked up beyond everybody's wildest dreams. Now, in the end of the 90s, the industry said, okay, let's add some zest to this, and this is where we invented 3G, the third generation, and we said this is going to allow you to transfer basically data and movies and games and music and everything on your phone.
What's the difference between 3G and 4G other than speed?
Right now, nothing.
In the future, something?
In the future, it's the same as 2G to 3G. We will just enable the technology, and it's up to the users and the developers to create the differentiation between them.
Okay. Where is 4G? Is there 4G in the region?
4G will start popping up in the GCC soon. You will see something in the UAE and in Saudi, as usual. They start usually with adopting the earliest technologies. But as I said, for this to become a real democratized technology, to have it in phones and in every phone and in an affordable way, you'll have to wait another 3 to 4 years at least.
Okay.
Are there any 4G devices that are currently out there?
Modems mainly. In the US, just launched. USB dongles and MiFis, portable routers, and one smartphone recently launched. That's it.
Okay.
So it's still early days for 4G. 3G has a lot of steam behind it. It will go on forever. And actually, we see basically a world where multiple technologies will coexist. Same way that we didn't turn off 2G. You have your GSM networks everywhere in the world. These technologies will live together and will serve different areas and different topographies, let's say.
Okay. So I want to step back and ask you guys, Yes.
I just would like to give a small comment. 4G, which is LTE, will be deployed in Lebanon. As you know, the deployment of the 3G is planned for August. We already started deploying as the mobile operator. What is
3G or 4G?
Yes, this is 3G.
Yeah.
Sorry, when you say you...
we are from the Alpha team.
Okay.
We're a mobile network operator in Lebanon.
Yeah, that I know.
Sorry. Deploying 3G, and there will be LTE trial in the BCD, which is the downtown region. So LTE is here. There's no handset for LTE, so you can't call. You can access data, which is with very high data rates. LTE is also being deployed in the UAE with Etisalat and Ericsson. What?
Commercial break, Alpha.
It's with an F, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah, it's an F, not APH.
Sorry.
So-
Can you keep the microphone with her just for a second?
Yeah, let's have a chat.
Also, I want everyone who's tweeting to know we're going to take some questions from Twitter,
Yes.
right? So please tweet your questions to Twitter also. Don't everyone look at the screen all the time. We're here too.
I totally agree with what you said, and exactly what you said is right. You will roll out 3G across the country, and you will have LTE in the BCD area, which is exactly how we see it develop initially. It will be for data only, a little bit more expensive maybe types of modems, and with time it might move to voice, but frankly speaking, I don't know what's the future of voice.
Voice over LTE.
Voice in general, who's using it?
Yeah.
So maybe we can take also 1 minute of silence for the death of the voice call, probably next year, not this year. But you know, it's not going much further. So from an alpha perspective also, we're here to help you to plan for the post-voice era.
Yeah, sure.
You still
It's
need-
just that there is a paper that is going on in Lebanon that they need to vote on something for broadband. The broadband is coming. I mean, fiber is within the couple of years coming. That's not a joke.
It has been everywhere for 10
That
years.
is not a joke.
Did you guys? How many
We're
people
working
here?
on it.
How many people here read the report that said that Lebanon was the slowest country in the world in internet usage and internet speed? That is a tragedy. That is such a tragedy. It's unbelievable. It makes me angry. It makes me sick. I want to.
Yeah, but I mean, here in ArabNet, I think we should propose it. But people really need to understand why there is such a slow connection
I
in
know. I
Lebanon.
have to ask you this. I have to ask all these people who are in the telecom industry this. Where
Actually,
are they today?
I'll
Where
say-
have they been for 3 days?
Omar, my other question is, you guys are, and again, this is not an attack against you as an operator, because I know that there's very little that you guys can do, or maybe there isn't, I don't know. But you guys are giving everybody 3G in 3 months, 6 months?
Planned in August. The first
Let's
call
say
would be in
December.
April.
I'll
next
be
month.
extremely happy if
How
it's
much?
December. You're giving me a 7.4, is that the exact number?
7.2 mega. 7.2 mega, and in some places it would be
Okay,
21.
to download
Just
from
one.
where? There is no, I don't think the entire country has this bandwidth that I could use on
That's
one
not
phone.
the problem, Fawzi.
Yeah,
You can
we-
achieve that. The key, really. And this is not, I'm sure not for Alpha to answer, it's for
Yeah, of
much
course.
higher authorities, is how much is this going to cost? Because if you're going to price it prohibitively, بعدين شو عملنا? How much is this going to cost to the end user? How much is the consumer going to pay for getting access to this technology? That's the question. The problem in Lebanon is not only the technology availability, it's the pricing. Even on voice today, we know how high are
Yeah.
the prices. And these are the highest in the world. So we have the slowest networks and the highest. It's, you know, superlatives
Tragic.
bigger than Dubai.
I'm going to
Yeah?
tell you a personal story, an ArabNet story right now, okay? So last year we had some internet, everyone complained. We're an internet conference, we're trying really hard, okay? We tried so hard to make sure that the internet worked. Still, it did not work. But it is not our fault, because you know what? We went around to multiple service providers. We asked different people to help us get internet. And you know what? We eventually got 30 megabits per second. 30 megabits per second. Does anyone here feel that they had 30 megabits per second? Okay, 30 megabits per second. How does that compare to what you just said to home? What is it that they're getting in Saudi Arabia?
100?
42
on the mobile. today.
42 to mobile. 42 megabits per second to mobile. I literally maxed out the capacity of multiple ISPs in Lebanon to get internet that was not sufficient for a 750-person conference.
Well,
For,
you should have asked
for the
50
29
megawatts
kilobyte
of
file this morning.
Sorry?
I couldn't upload a 29 kilobyte file
Right,
this morning.
you couldn't upload 29 kilobyte. So all I have to say is, I mean, I know and I appreciate that these guys were our sponsors and our partners, but whatever it is that needs to be done, someone needs to fix this. And whatever petition needs to be signed, I mean, people have been signing these petitions for a long time. I don't want to turn this into politics. I do feel strongly about it. Anyone who wants my support on anything related to speeding up broadband in Lebanon, I'm 100% for this. I will put I get anyone that I know to support it.
And I'll fully support it
Yes.
for the next web as well.
Sorry? How many people here are supporting it?
It's funny that it's not 100%. This is where it's kind of like funny. It's not 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, who's not supporting it?
Get out. No, don't.
Okay.
Can
well,
we turn
besides
this
that
back
rant-
into the topic?
Yes, without
But
the
we
rant,
digress.
Beyond the rant. Okay, so, sorry.
And offline, I would like to continue discussion with Alpha to see how
Great,
we can
great.
support them
And we're sorry, we
practically.
definitely don't mean to pinpoint you out here. It's not you. It's your people. Okay. Do you guys want to even, I want to open the.
Yeah, we're having some
let's
questions.
do questions from the audience.
We're going to ask the audience some questions as well.
Okay,
So,
great. Let's do that.
The guy in the white.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Wa'al Komati. I'm with the Ajma team, not representative.
You're
I
with what
just-
team, sorry?
With Ajma
Okay.
Association. I just wanted to say that we are going to have fiber optic, as she said, in a couple of months, but it will be only in downtown
No,
area.
3G in a couple of months, not fiber optics.
Okay, we have 3G in a couple of months, and then we'll have fiber optic that will be
in-
only in, I don't know in how many years, but it will be first and only downtown.
Of course.
The problem when you will have the 3G, okay, it should be based on some connectivity to the internet, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if the internet you have is really slow internet, then the benefit or efficiency of using that 3G technology won't be popular or won't be useful. So it's still useless technology or device in Lebanon?
Mr. Qualcomm.
So he's absolutely right. I mean, at the end of the day, we need to get out of Lebanon. What we're talking about are speeds that are between...
Like now?
No. Get the internet out of Lebanon or into Lebanon, actually. So the speeds that we're talking about are the speeds within the network, but it's very important that the country has capacity connecting to the internet outside. There are solutions, of course, which we don't provide that are made to accelerate the internet inside the country, but the key is going to be to have a reasonably priced connectivity to the internet.
My name is Ola Farawati and I head content and apps in Zen, Jordan. We just launched SPA Plus, which is pre-LTE, and it's quite fast. Our target for sale for...
sorry, what did you launch? I can't-
HSPA Plus.
Okay.
This is the 21 megabits technology and 40.
And our target for a year was sold in less than a month. So there's a very high demand from users. I want to ask Qualcomm about people conversions from 2G to 3G and from a 2G phone into a 3G phone and into a smartphone. What do you think is the biggest motive for that? Is it access? Because if it's access only, and operators are not yet providing access to so many countries in the region, what will be the motive for users?
Actually, from a conversion of phones, we're seeing it in countries where there is no 3G. Lebanon and Iran, both of them don't have 3G officially, and we have some of the highest smartphone and 3G numbers of devices being sold every month in these countries.
Do all people who have a 2G phone and switch to a 3G phone know that they're switching to a 3G phone?
Probably not. They buy the phone just because most of the latest and the nicest phones are 3G anyway. So how many people have an iPhone 3G or an iPhone 4 here, basically? You do the count. So, like I said, the phones are dropping in price. So you can today have a phone on the market that's priced in the below basically $100 range. That's a 3G phone, and you can have smartphones in the $100 to $150 range. So pricing as well is not an issue. It's an issue of awareness, and also like we had a chat with Alpha today, the pricing of the connectivity. How are we going to make the consumer aware that he can do a lot more with his phone and that it's not going to cost him a lot of money? And operators are helping because you're launching your bundled data plans that, for a month and an unlimited amount, I can just pay a certain amount of money. That's the basic barrier to entry.
That's what I was going to say, that in fact, if you look at Europe between 2G and 3G, it was kind of like very quick, and it's kind of like very good for the actual operator, because average revenue per user is in fact increasing dramatically when you have 3G and 4G type of network compared to 2G, where in fact you cannot get data or proper data into your cell phone.
Analysis of ARPU in that regard, because, for example, if you are talking about youth, they spend somewhere between $7 to $15 a month on their phones. And if you analyze this, you can see that this is taken from their time out, from money they spend on other things. So I think should be the analysis. I don't think it's the enablers or the phone itself or the speed. I think it is the income and prioritizing that income into things that give them value.
But that's as well true, elsewhere, in a sense that, I have kids, I have 3 kids, all of them have mobile phones, and they have kind of like limited capacity, let's say $20, per month on their card, and that's not where, in fact, the operator is going to go and make money, but in fact is with actual business users, which if you have a 2G, like here, I didn't download in Lebanon, whenever I'm not here at ArabNet, any kind of like data. If I was able to have 3G, I would have eventually had $100 worth of roaming in terms of data. And this is helping the operator locally and the operator there. So the actual average revenue per user is much higher. Plus, any business traveler who in fact is going from one meeting to the other will be able to go and download the file, will be able to go and exchange email, will be able to go and do location-based services, any other kind of like social functionalities into the actual mobile phone will be able to apply, and therefore helping having video, having photos, having whatever, MMS, whatever, just name it. So it's not only the youth and the young generation who's going to use it, but in fact everyone else. And that is not happening today.
Sorry, Patrick, just to add on what you're saying, I don't think it's fair to even judge the price of a package based on the technology that it's providing, because there's a lot of additional elements that come on top of it. If somebody, let's even consider a youth who's paying $15 to $20 a month for a subscription package of X amount of data, if that comes with relevant content, music, entertainment, whatever it is that this target audience is interested in, then it will justify the cost. If it doesn't, then you start having a discussion of, is it really expensive or not? But I think this kind of costing needs to be done on a business level, but then all of the other additional features of, and we're not just talking chat and everything else, I'm talking real proper, money worth content to provide to these consumers, because that's where your challenge is going to be next. It's not going to be with the back end.
Guys.
Yeah, but you have to look as well at the capex. From a capital expenditure as an operator, going from 2G to 3G is not kind of like very high, expensive. And therefore, the average revenue per user is going to go increase dramatically, going 2G to 3G. So pricing are going to go down as you're going to have kind of like more people using, in fact, the 3G. So at the end of the day, it's, this ratio has to be worked out.
So for those of you who are sick of the slow internet in Lebanon, there is a revolution being planned by Samir Karam of Sequence on April 17th. Look on the ArabNet Facebook page and you'll have all the information. My question to Qualcomm and maybe Alpha is, why are we going through from 2G to 3G and then perhaps thinking about LTE later? And why are we not going through WiMAX directly? This seems like maybe a more affordable solution.
Why what?
Why not switch to WiMAX?
Why not?
WiMAX.
There's no phone. There's no phone.
I thought it was dead as well, but that's fine. We'll have to answer it now. WiMAX didn't pick up as a global standard. And the key thing in achieving these affordabilities that we're talking about are economies of scale. It's very important that the whole industry aligns behind a certain standard so that we have a lot of devices coming out with supporting the same standard, and then we can achieve lower figures. So that's the real reason why WiMAX didn't pick up. We're going to see very few remaining WiMAX operators in the coming years, and they will mostly also migrate into LTE eventually.
I think
so
that
today,
was the question off of Twitter. I think her question was, why are we not just jumping over 3G and going straight to 4G?
He's actually
so
answering that.
to 4G,
okay,
again,
maybe I'm not
there's
confused
no such thing as you can jump again, but today the economies of scale are not yet behind 4G. So you can implement 4G today, and if you don't provide 3G as an alternative, you're going to end up with very expensive devices that nobody is able to afford. That's the reason. So anyway, 3G and 4G are complementary, and they can serve different purposes. 3G, depending on the spectrum it's using, can cover a lot more geography than 4G or LTE. So what Alpha is doing is very clever. We will cover the whole country with 3G so that you can fall back to your 21 or 42 megabits per second eventually. And then in the hotspots, in the very hotspots like Beirut Central District or the big urban areas and business centers, we can have 4G. And the devices that are going to be out there will support both technologies. So if you're driving with your car through a 4G area, you will go up to 4G and then you'll drop out and go back to 3G eventually. So that will not be an issue. So that's the way it will shape up eventually.
I actually have also a story related to this, also related to ArabNet. So how many people participated in anything related to the ArabNet Roadshow, in any of our workshops anywhere in the region? ArabNet Roadshow. Awesome. Okay, not that many. So what we did is actually we hopped on a bus and traveled around the region to 7 different countries. And in each country we stopped and we held workshops for entrepreneurs to train them and to start their own businesses. And one of the adventures that we did actually with Qualcomm was to get 3G SIM cards in every country that we went to use the internet on the bus. And so we actually probably more than anyone else have an experience of what it's like to travel in every country and use 3G. And what I can say actually is that as soon as you get out of the big cities, it almost becomes useless. Yeah. There's very little really fast connectivity outside the main cities, and
it also gets useless once you get into the specific center point of the city.
No,
I mean, there's
actually
a
our
traffic
connections were good in the cities to varying extents. Actually, one sad thing was that actually it was faster in the middle of the desert in Saudi Arabia than our internet here in Lebanon, which is kind of sad. But once you get out of my biggest observation is that once you get out of the big cities, it becomes kind of useless.
Yeah. Networks take time to roll out, and a country like Saudi Arabia to cover the highway between Jeddah and Riyadh is an exercise by itself.
Yes, so 14 hours of desert.
Just to drive it takes time. Imagine installing a 3G base station every 60
there were two
kilometers.
questions that are related to you. One of them was actually a comment saying that WiMAX is quite popular in South Korea. You said it's not a standard, so just please clarify
it
the
is
difference between
standard
or
but
not.
just didn't pick up. There are lots of standards. There was Betamax and VHS long time
true.
ago, and more recently Blu-ray and HD DVDs. Usually, all players in an ecosystem tend to try to agree on one standard that will work for them all because they all achieve economies of scale, and that's why eventually one standard falls out of the game. It remains available sometimes, but it dies out mostly.
I'll just want to make one comment, which is fascinating. I think that it's not a question of 2G, 3G, or 4G or technology. I think it's more about the political aspects. If we believe that in Lebanon, internet can drive economy and that internet can drive jobs and create jobs and be able to go and put some dynamic into all that, I think this is where, in fact, the political aspect will follow. If you take an example of Jordan, why in fact there's many kind of like high-tech companies going into Jordan and investing in Jordan and going after the actual ITs and developers that there's there, because they are putting the infrastructure there. I was at the Arab Social Media Forum in December, and I met the Ministry of Telecoms, and it was like great. He spent, in fact, the full half day of the full day conference there, meeting with people, talking to people, because he believes that this is kind of like key and very important for the young generation and for the students. I think that it is not just a question of broadband, it's not just a question of technology. I think it's, at the beginning, it's a question of an initiative and a political belief that this is what needs to be done in the country.
Sorry, somebody misquoted Ziad saying you cannot jump from 2G to 3G, so he felt he had to respond.
Okay. Questions?
I used to live in Lebanon. I just moved to Dubai a few months back, and I know that when I first got there, I went for the fastest internet they've got for mobile broadband. So I got one of those Etisalat mobile broadband cards. They say it's 7.2 or 21 speed Mbps. But when you actually test it, it's maybe, if you're lucky, 1, 2, or 3. So I thought there was something wrong with that. I actually went back to the Etisalat headquarters, and they tested it out and said, I'm sorry, this is how it is.
It's up to, ultimately.
But you never actually get it. And he says you have to really take the 21 and divide it by 4 for the mobile.
So the industry as a whole, frankly speaking, has did a little bit of a bad job, thanks to our very good advertising partners, in going out there and including myself saying the theoretical speed limits if there was one user in one cell. Yeah. So that's the 21 megabits per second. Right. The moment you get 2, 3 users, it's not going to be divided automatically by 2, 3, because there are technologies that speed that up, but definitely the 21 megabits per second is a very theoretical limit that can actually be achieved in a very ideal scenario, almost a lab environment. So the numbers are lower, but the same numbers apply for fixed line internet or mobile or fixed broadband. If you buy in Dubai as well, or in the UAE, if you buy a 4 megabits line to your house, you are practically going to get somewhere around 1 megabits per second, plus or minus. So that's the same thing. It's a communication issue more than a technology issue.
There's this tiny asterisk that's missing at the end with a big disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
They do put that actually, and they say up to 21.
We do put that.
Now, I've gotten actually the home one from Etisalat, and it was 30. We upgraded to 30, and we got sometimes as high as 70. It varied, but you're right, it did vary up and down. And I understand Dubai, for example, is like 90% fiber, which has certainly an advantage.
That's depressing.
Yeah. But the cost of rolling out the fiber project in Dubai and the time it took, I mean, you can check the Etisalat recently announced figures, is really tremendous. So the advantages of mobility, while bearing a little bit with those theoretical limits, is much bigger. And at the end of the day, from a mobile perspective, your needs and what you will do on your phone can most likely, with today's apps and content, you're more than happy with 3 to 5 megabits per second in general as actual speeds. With the future, we'll see what kind of apps and content will be sold over the phones.
Okay.
Can we actually get questions that are more related to the way mobile, social, and web get together as opposed to?
I would love to.
Okay, so my question to you is, we're talking about all this megabits up and down and et cetera,
Okay.
Which is maybe very useful if you're doing video and music, whatever. But for businesses, people who are generally using documents, and they don't tend to be very big, are we really seeing them moving into businesses, into mobile? Is it something that they want?
Businesses? Are you talking about businesses here moving to mobile?
Yeah, I'm talking about businesses. I'm talking about value-added services for people who want to make money at the end of the day. So I'm asking, are there out there people who are doing apps for businesses? Okay.
Of course there are.
Actually, I'd even like to make the question as a little bit broader, which is something I wanted to ask earlier, which is how are businesses, what is the changes in social and web and mobile mean for businesses? How are they taking advantage of these new technologies? Or what are the new technologies kind of forcing them to change their strategies? How are businesses reacting?
I mean, I can tell you from a multinational point of view or perspective. 2 years ago, as per the code of conduct of the holding company of the company that I work for, or any other multinational. So we're talking, if we look at from a global perspective, even our clients or us, so WPP, Omnicom, Publicis, all the holding advertising agencies, or all my major clients, there was a code of conduct 2 years ago that you had to sign that kind of said that you're not allowed to do instant messaging, any kind of social or microblogging or blogging in your name or anybody else through work premises because of their concern of information not being controlled properly. Everything else had to go through the server. Today, we actually get documents of how to behave on social media. So there's even moderation documentation and or democratization of what corporations need to do and how they need to do it on social media, which is extremely fantastic, in knowing that it's only a two-year time span. So today, every one of us is present on the social media. Every one of us has their own corporate blog. Every one of us retweets and tweets and sends messages to corporate clients as well.
I think that the question, if I'm not wrong, was that businesses is more document-oriented than video and music-oriented. And I'll tend to say that it is wrong. And I'll say why. Very simply, e-learning. If you take, for example, a hotel, Intercontinental, just to take as an example, and they have kind of like many Intercontinental in the region, to be able to go and train the employees on the software for food and beverage, as an example, and they will need eventually to either send someone to go and train in each of the actual employees, or have teams going, in fact, at the same time, or you can use eventually the internet and e-learning, and that's through an intranet. So in fact, it's a private network internally within the actual company where employees can go and take 1 or 2 hours and learn through the actual e-learning and ask questions. And all that is being done with photo and video and rich media, which in fact needs to have large broadband. That's one example. The second example is whenever, for example, in our business, whether it's Fawzi or myself or even, Omar, whenever we're dealing with our customers or prospects, we do PowerPoint presentation. There's no PowerPoint presentation that I send which is less than 20 megabytes.
That's true.
So how can I go and send a 20 megabyte file if I don't have, in fact, the bandwidth? How can I interact with a customer, on a slide share in order for him to be able to go and download this presentation? Or I can go and drop in a Dropbox, the file, or, many, many, many examples. So saying that, in fact, today businesses are only on documents, documents are multi-rich. You embed with them kind of like photos, you embed videos, and it's automatically kind of like a megabyte type of file.
Yeah, and actually even beyond just that, looking at social media,
Yeah.
I look at all these companies who today have YouTube channels, right? We have a YouTube channel, and we struggle to get all of our content online to keep engaging our community in what we're doing. Our photos, all of our rich content, and we're not the only ones. Aramex has an awesome YouTube channel. They're constantly uploading things to it. So these are other things that companies are doing that require a ton of bandwidth.
And you're not just talking about the fact that they're conducting their business with other people. Even internally, from one city or country to another, a lot of people are relying on VoIP instead of phone calls because it's cheaper. But even mobile.
So you're talking about the mobile.
Even from a mobile perspective, Patrick just mentioned the Dropbox app that we all know of. It's on the mobile. I use it every other day.
How many people here use Dropbox?
That's the 4th commercial break we take so far. I'm keeping track. So in terms of productivity tools, they're out there. They're on the mobile. Look at any mobile devices out there today, from a Symbian perspective, from an Android, from an of course iOS, or a Windows one even. There's not a single one of them that doesn't allow you to properly work with Word documents, Excel sheets, PowerPoint presentations, and the additional stuff of file sharing, Skype, peer-to-peer communications, remote access to your machine in order to administer things. There's tons of enabling apps out there. I don't think the fact that it's on mobile means that it is no longer business. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's just probably because it's so B2B in focus, it hasn't been publicized or exploited.
Just take the B2C.
In that amount.
The B2C, we talked earlier on how many people are on Facebook, how many people have a smartphone. There's 1.2 million, Facebook users in Lebanon. If you are an enterprise, being a restaurant, being a hotel, or being kind of like, a normal service company, and you want to go and be able to go and market to those consumers, those consumers have a mobile phones, and they use kind of like Facebook on their mobile phones. If you cannot interact with them, if you don't have the broadband, if you don't have the 3G, these actual consumers, you cannot reach them. Where in other countries, your competitors are able to reach them. And this is where, in fact, you have to position as well Lebanon in the region. So not only kind of like Lebanon in Lebanon, but as a region. So where you're traveling, your competitor are able to go and push this actual information, to the actual users, but not here. And that's where the advantage is.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
To Fawzi.
Okay, I wanna do 2 quick questions before we wrap up the panel. You have a question, and I'm gonna take one that was already put on Twitter, and then we're gonna wrap up because we have to close the panel.
Yes.
We as Qualcomm, or as the industry, including Alpha, Etisalat, Zain, everybody else,
You're going up against me now.
are giving you 7.2 megabits theoretically, are giving you cheap phones that can
Relatively
display
speaking.
multimedia.
Cheap phones. Someone give me one of those.
Yeah, low cost, let's see, rephrase.
Nokia.
These phones have very high-end processors, beautiful screens, lots of colors on them, etc. And you, as an advertising agency and the advertising world...
I'm giving you 2 things.
No, you're giving me 2 things as a consumer,
Yes.
not as Qualcomm. An SMS at 4 a.m. in the morning telling me that I should, take advantage of a prepaid subscription while I actually have a postpaid one.
Of course.
So what is the future of mobile advertising, in your opinion? And is it only about sending an SMS, which, like we said, was invented by mistake 15 years ago, or just showing a logo on a banner? Or will we see a little bit more taking advantage and abusing the technologies that we are putting outside, because our friends in social are doing a great job at that.
I completely agree with you, and I think it is probably 90% the fault of the advertising business when it comes to this. I'm not going to say it's totally, because there are some other elements that will be related to it, but the majority of the problem is advertising related. The main problem starts with the actual content. So let's not talk about whether, the first challenge that we have to do is the actual customization of messaging. Before we get into whether it's an SMS, or whether it's a push message on an app, or whether it's a fully fledged solution that provides you with a technology, let's talk about the way you get an email. You sometimes get an email at, again, 4 in the morning. It's not as disruptive as a text message, but it also sells you a postpaid plan when you have a prepaid one, or vice versa. Yeah. So customization of messaging is something that all the clients in this region need to work on, because there is no proper, what we call a CRM platform, which kind of manages the database of every single person, speaks to you based on your life cycle. If you just bought a phone, I'm not going to send you a message and tell you, this is how you replace the battery. You're going to freak out and say, why do I need to replace the battery? If I wait for about 6 months and say, by the way, if your battery is draining, then you need to do this, it makes more sense. So timely and contextual messaging is very important. That's across all channels. We're not just talking about mobile. So that kind of answers the first part of the 4 a.m. message, which we're all trying to get rid of. It's not going to happen anytime soon. There's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be built. There's a lot of content that has to be generated. This is not something that can be resolved in the next couple of years. The second part is the actual creative media buy, if you want to say, or creative assets that are out there. Because today, we're talking about, in terms of mobile at least, we're talking about text-based ads or some kind of pop-up that loads up, of course doesn't play Flash, with some HTML5 thing and a message, and that's about it. In terms of where we're going with this, as marketeers, we'd love to take over the entire app, or the entire phone in general, to be able to provide content that is more or less subsidized by the advertising that's out there, and provide things that are relevant, as opposed to a message that is completely irrelevant. The challenge is being able to get enough content from anybody. And I was also moderating the streaming video panel yesterday. It's very difficult to get content because people just sit on it. And I'm not putting the blame on them as well, because we're not striking the right deals either. But there's a lot of content that needs to be created and shared upon which this kind of branded or personalized information is out there. If I don't know what you're watching, what you're accessing, I don't know how to talk to you. If I don't have the right app that speaks to this kind of target audience, I can't go to my client and tell them this is the best app on which you can advertise. And by the way, here's a really cool thing that we can do. So it's all related. Again, it is the majority of the problem is our fault, because we need to drive this conversation and we haven't been doing it yet, for tons of reasons. None of them are justifiable. But generally speaking, this is where it needs to be. It needs to be personalized based on what you're watching, what you're accessing, what you're reading. And we're not just talking Google AdWords style. We're talking proper contextual, experience-based activation via mobile.
Social media.
And social media.
Basically, exactly. The answer is that the future of mobile advertising is going to be social.
Yes, of course. Okay. That's a short answer to your question.
Thank you.
So, last thing is a question that we got off of Twitter, which is asking about location-based services, which actually brings together all of you in one question. So what do you think is the future of location-based services in the region? And a question of privacy. Do you think that there are privacy concerns and how they're going to be addressed?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so go for it. Who wants to start?
Just because I finished up. I think, location, again, it was something that was invented around 10 years ago and it didn't pick up initially. Now every smartphone almost has a GPS in it.
Who from the audience uses location-based services? Are you happy with the content it provides? Who's happy with the content that it provides in Lebanon? Or in the Middle East, at least, relatively speaking? The Arab world. Okay, so there's no content for it.
So the content has to come from the users, like you said. So that's the answer. Now, in terms of privacy, it seems, and I do it a lot. I mean, the easiest thing I do, and probably several times a day, is I have read and I agree and I accept these terms and conditions, and nobody cares. So we move on. And depending on how you look at it, the way we are behaving today compared to the way we behaved 10 years ago is almost loose.
How many people have read one of those agreements?
End to end.
That's amazing.
So many lawyers in the room.
I have to. So
you have?
But your question.
You've written one.
Yeah, of course. But not personally, but your question is, with regards to privacy, is related to location-based services or in general?
Location-based services.
I think both of them are interesting.
I mean, are we talking about the Please Rob Me apps where you check in every 5 minutes and you let people know that you're not there, that kind of privacy?
Sure.
It's more, I think, on the
I just
location.
I mean, on location-based services is interesting, but in general, on Facebook and all the amount of content that we're making publicly available about ourselves, and that will never be removed off the internet ever again.
I think it's an over-exaggerated dramatization of a situation. If you guys care about your privacy, don't go out in public saying things that you shouldn't. The way you behave at home is different from the way you behave on the street, it's different than the way you behave in your office. This is a new channel, this is a new method of communication. Whatever you say can and will be used against you, so don't unless you're really sure about it.
How many people before meeting someone Google them? How many people here have Googled themselves?
Every day, of course.
How many people have a Google alert on themselves?
No.
I do too.
I have a Google alert on mine.
No, egocentric, not narcissistic though.
No, you gotta know
Borderline.
Hey, it's about managing your personal brand, right? How many personal brand people are out there? Bob the best. So, you want to help give us some more thoughts on this, Patrick? You didn't share.
No, I mean, location-based services, I think that one aspect, one question that we ask is, in fact, how many people are happy with the content on location-based services. I think that we have to go through the actual first phase of the hype. Most people kind of like use Foursquare, kind of like, yes, I'm the mayor, I have this actual badge, etc., etc. But in terms of having content, you need to have a critical mass. So if you have only kind of like, 50,000 people on Foursquare in the whole Arab region,
this is
kind of like, I don't know the numbers, there's no kind of like public number for Foursquare in the region. So it's still kind of like very limited. At least, for example, if I take France, it's still kind of like very low number. So I guess that in the region it's not going to be as big as in France. And that's kind of like the problem. Once, in fact, you have a critical mass, this is where, in fact, you'll have content driving it. I think that the most important thing about privacy settings and location-based services, I think it's two different matters wherever you are on Facebook in terms of privacy setting or in terms of location-based services. I'll just say one thing, that privacy settings has always existed. Anyone here has a credit card, I guess, or some of us pay a lot with credit cards. Well, there's one journalist which in fact have taken one person's life into a full week and have able, with his credit card, to go and know exactly what he has done every 5 minutes or every hour of his life during, in fact, that week. Credit cards are used, for example, in the US or in Europe with fidelity cards. And in fact, this actual fidelity card knows exactly what did you buy, how much milk you have bought, how much kind of like, pasta have you bought, etc., and will send you targeted, in fact, advertising and sell, in fact, your address to other of their partners because you have checked, in fact, this box where you accept the term and condition, which are written so small that it's kind of like non-human to be able to read them, where you accepted that, in fact, your information are given to all other partners of, in fact, your supermarket. And Facebook is doing the same thing. The only difference is they're doing it openly and publicly. And it's funny, it is in fact more our generation, my generation and my parents' generation that have a problem with these actual privacy settings compared to my children, which in fact are born with this in fact Facebook and Twitter, and therefore basically no border, no kind of like limitation between privacy and public settings. It's kind of like everything is public and they have no problem with it. So on location-based services is a bit different because you have a GPS, you'll know where people are. But I'll give one example and finish with this one, which is in one of my customer, and I will not name it, but in fact it's basically business travelers. Whenever you have, for example, business travelers as a big company traveling all over the world, it is sometimes very, very important to locate them. So whenever you have a problem, like it's happening, for example, in Egypt, in Libya, or elsewhere, like in Japan, you can locate this actual business traveler so you can do whatever is necessary to bring him back home, or at least to give him kind of like advice of how he could get back home. So these actual location-based services on your mobile phone could be very, very helpful from a security point of view, or in terms of war, in terms of whatever kind of like force majeure situations.
Great. Thank you very much for the panel. Guys, please feel free to come up, get to know them a bit better, ask them your questions. They're going to be around. We're going to be around. There's a full schedule of activities happening. You can see the activities on the screen. I think we're going to be pushing everything by half an hour? Half an hour. So actually what we'll do is we'll change the times on the screen so that you will know the correct timing. I just have a few announcements to make. There's a photo booth outside. If I point my hand at the hall, you'll see the big ArabNet shards of glass. That is a photo booth that has been built on Kinect, which is kind of a motion sensor technology. So if you've never played with that, we encourage you to go out and play with it. You'll be able to apply different filters to the photos that you've taken, and it's kind of an experiment that we've been working on. The other thing is I wanted to announce that TEDx Ramallah is taking place on April 16th, if my notes are correct. And they'll be live streaming it actually, April 16th. They'll be live streaming it here to Beirut for people to watch. And so if you want to learn more about it, please check out TEDx Ramallah's Facebook page. You can find more details there. So, any announcements that I missed? Yes, it is going to be parallel sessions. So this is Hall A. If you'll see, it says Hall A, Hall B. The one right next to us is Hall B. You'll be able to find everything that you need. Thank you very much, and see you. Yeah,
Thank
cheers.
you, Omar.
See you.
Thank you, Omar.